Hello. Welcome to my cozy innovation inspiration space. I'm Diana Kander, here to answer your questions about curiosity, innovation, and customer experience to help you get the edge in your everyday work. I focus a lot on habits because it doesn't really matter what your strategy is, it's how your team works that determines whether you're gonna meet that strategy. And there are three things that I see more often in teams that are really struggling, really having trouble creating growth in their organization. The first negative habit I see that slows down innovation and speed inside of a company is not having psychological safety. Google loves data analytics, and they did a deep dive into their team dynamics, what creates good teams versus bad teams. They created Project Aristotle, which studied 180 different teams, interviewed 200 people, and looked at over 250 different team dynamics to find that there was actually one thing more than anything else that determined whether your team was going to create success and value or it wasn't, and that was psychological safety. Whether your team members feel safe taking risks and being vulnerable in front of one another. That if you don't have psychological safety on your team, there are many team members that don't believe in your project. They think it's gonna fail, but they don't say anything because they're more afraid of losing their job or looking bad than they are of raising any kind of objections. I do this whenever I go talk to companies, and I actually ask people to raise their hand if they're currently working on a project that they don't believe in. Almost everybody raises their hand. They don't raise them high. It's like this, right? They just want me to see it. They want somebody to know that there is something wrong there, but they're so scared to say it to the people that they work with. Psychological safety is a big deal and is the number one habit that's going to determine whether you're successful or not. The second habit is not looking at failure metrics. So most teams, they have this elaborate process that they have to approve new projects and send them out into the field, but they have nothing to revisit those projects a year later or 6 months later to see if they're meeting any of the metrics that they set out for themselves. Companies usually think, well, if it hasn't failed in some spectacular way, it must be going well. That's not true. You have lots of zombie projects that are sucking resources out of your company and not creating the kind of value that you want that you don't know about because you're not even looking. Really innovative companies, they have a whole process to find those zombies on their teams so that they can use their resources, their time to work on projects that are actually going to create value and make a difference. And the third negative habit that I see that slows down innovation and growth creation on teams is not having good feedback loops with customers. One of the first questions I ask teams is, how do you hear back from customers when they're unhappy or disappointed in something? And most organizations, they just wait for customers to come to them with complaints, or they have an annual survey to see how customers are feeling. Well, that's crazy. I mean, think of for yourself how many times you've complained when you've been unhappy. It takes a certain level of unhappiness to even say anything. Most people just leave. They just find happiness elsewhere. What are those feedback loops that you're creating to constantly reach out to customers and hear all their different frustrations and tension points in your product or your service that will give you ideas and opportunities to innovate and solve their problems? Feedback loops are the key to coming up with ideas for innovation. It is these three habits that I see more than anything else that slow down innovation in teams. I want you this week to make a list of questions you can ask your team or your customers to see how you're doing on each one. My guess is that at least one of these three bad habits exist on your team, and if you can find a way to alleviate it, you're gonna significantly increase the speed and the power of growth on your team. I'm Diana Kander, and this is Innovation Inspiration. Send in your questions to diana@dianakander.com. Don't forget to stay curious.